Three, two, one.
You ready?
You're listening to the Real Pineapple Podcast Network. Thank you so much for listening. This is the Real Pineapple. This is your humble host, Hunter, here. Happy Father's Day out there. Hope you guys are staying safe, having fun. Hopefully you're able to celebrate Father's Day in a safe and socially distancing sort of way. But got a review here for you guys. I'm going to be honest, guys. I know this month our content has been not of the most fun variety. I know we've been reviewing a lot of heavy stuff. I've got this review right now. It's for the Untold story of Emmett Lewis Teal, which, again, I know, not the happiest thing in the world to talk about, but I really do think that given the moment we're in, and given the, I truly believe what will end up becoming a systematic shift in race relations, it really is important for us here at the Real Pineapple to go ahead and use the platform that we have to go ahead and really try to educate and inform as many people as possible. No, we're not a news podcast or anything like that, but given what is going on, I think that it's very important for us to look at things that are talking about social issues and things that are relevant in the times that we're in right now. I'm going to kind of get the promotional stuff out of the way now. If you like this podcast, if this is something that you dig, please go ahead and show your support. Go ahead and like us on Facebook at The Real Pineapple. Go ahead and share us. You can find us on SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Podbean, Stitcher Radio, Spotify, and iHeartRadio at The Real Pineapple. You can follow yours truly on Twitter at jhunter, Real Pineapple. That's REEL Pineapple. And you can follow Scott on Twitter at Nearman the First. Cool. I'm not going to mention anything else about the podcast moving forward. Got this review here. So this is something that I wasn't really familiar with until I was going through my Amazon. I went, oh, something on Emmett Till. I'm curious on that. This documentary came out back in 2005, which is crazy to think it's been that long. It's got an insanely high rating on Rotten Tomatoes, 97% out of 32 reviews. So this was directed by Keith Beauchamp, and looks like it was actually just him. I apologize. This is the one thing on his Rotten Tomatoes that's showing up. It's just this. So I don't know if maybe I don't know why this is the only thing he's done. I think this documentary is incredibly well done. So just going through this here, Emmett Till was born on July 25th, 1941. His mother, Mammy Elizabeth Teal Mobley, went ahead and talked about how difficult her birth was and how he was a breech baby, which I had no idea about. And a breech baby is basically right before birth, where the baby sometimes is in a bottom feet first or feet first position. That's what a breech baby is. So they had to go ahead and actually turn him on his. It's crazy to know that he was a breech baby, but she went to work. Her mother went ahead. Emmett's grandmother really went ahead and raised him while the mom was working. And I did appreciate that they had interviews with the members of the family. His cousin, Reverend Wheeler Parker, talked about how Emmett was a prankster and how there's this point where they were out, I want to say in Chicago, and he kept yelling about how big his cousins were, and they would beat people up, and how white people kind of look at him like what the fuck. And we got to keep in mind, Emmett Till's saying this stuff back in the 50s. I think that social media has almost spoiled us, our president too, but I think that social media has almost spoiled us to the concept of saying things and there not being any consequences to it. And I know some people say, well, what about how people, lose jobs and stuff like that because of, stuff they've said, in years past. But there really is a difference between standing by what you say online and, being a keeper, being a keyboard warrior. And Emmett Till was out there, really speaking his mind, in places where it was dangerous. I mean, it's dangerous enough for a black person in America now to say really anything, especially back then. It was damn near suicide. So, they talked about in the documentary how mischievous he was, how he had no sense of danger, how everything was funny to him, how he had this prank he pulled where I guess he shot some firecrackers within city limits, which was a huge no-no back then. Also talking about him, they talked about how smart of a kid he was, how he was very great at art and science. And I will just say, I consider the podcast to be artistic. I write. I've never been good at science. Science has always been one of those things that's just because it's math, and I fucking hate math because I can debate, a film or a paper or why a book is good, but math, you have one right fucking answer, and I hate math for that reason because it's either this or it's not, and I don't know. That's always bothered me if I'm being completely honest. But to know that he was so smart really breaks your heart even more. I think about the movie, Hidden Figures, and how even something like Black Panther, where they talked about how black girls are getting more into science, and that's fucking amazing. We need more black scientists, period. I know this is random, but Art sure pulls that reference. I think it's season. Oh god, I think it's like season 4 where they shoot a black astronaut, and he tells Cyril that's like killing a unicorn. I mean, it really is true. So, it makes me very happy to think that, because of films that we've seen recently, that more people of color are getting into science, because we really do need to go ahead and have more people of color really not just valuing education, but valuing science. They talked about how in the Jim Crow era in the South, it was as close to a repressive regime as you can imagine, which I think is just I just reviewed Just Mercy earlier here today. By the time you guys hear this, will probably be like Monday or Tuesday, but I'm reviewing this on Sunday, and after just watching Just Mercy, it's crazy that this took place in the 50s, but you look at Just Mercy, it takes place in the 80s, and how so little has changed in the South for people of color. I know some people have that ignorant stance of, well, come on, that was 30 years ago. It can't possibly be the same. How long did it take for black people to, be, quote, officially free, unquote? So, 30 years really isn't that long. So I do appreciate the sense that while this film was made back in 2005, that it's still such an incredibly relevant film with everything that's going on right now. It's just going through other stuff here. Apparently there was no busing for black children, which I gotta be honest, it's something I just never even really thought about. So black kids had to walk 3 or 4 miles, usually minimum, just to get to school. And that in itself, you think about walking that far to get to school, and then pardon me, and then going ahead and being mistreated by kids or maybe even your teacher. So you're walking 3-4 miles to get to this place that's supposed to better you, and yet you're not welcome at the place that is supposed to better you. That's a hell of a mind fuck, for a black kid who's it's 5, 6, 7 years old. So Emmett went ahead and traveled to what's called Money, Mississippi for summer vacation, and his mother shares this heartbreaking anecdote about how he kissed her goodbye and gave her his watch and talked about how I won't need it where I'm going. And that in itself is just, I got chills when she said that, but for all the wrong reasons. Because you realize, wow, that's the last time that he was going to see his mother, and he didn't even, fucking realize. They talked about how, back then in summer, you'd be picking cotton all day and then go ahead and, when the sun went down, you would be off. And it's just, it's crazy to think that, again, not far removed from that. That's, 60 years ago. It's crazy how, again, so little, like, things have gotten better. Like, I think people need to understand things have gotten better, but it's not even close to how they should be. I mean, we look at all stuff going on right now. I mean, obviously, you know what? Never mind. Things should be better. I will leave it at that as I keep going down here. So Mrs. Bryant, she was, of course, the person who accused Emmett Till of what he was linked to. So Carolyn Bryant is her name, and let's just dive in about her. So she said that that he whistled at her. So they confirmed that in a documentary. One of Emmett's cousins confirmed that, yes, he did whistle at Mrs. Bryant. This is where it gets kind of crazy, though, because I didn't realize kind of how intense it got very quickly. So he whistled at her, and apparently the group, his cousins, everything that he was with, he scared everyone in the group because they realized, oh shit, you whistled at a white woman. Like, what the hell are you doing? And so they were concerned because they thought that she was going for a gun when she went to the car, and they went ahead and basically got in the car and drove off as quickly as possible. So Emmett begged his cousins to not tell their grandparents what happened, and I guess even the neighborhood, it kind of spread throughout the neighborhood, or at least their neighbors or direct neighbors, and they even said that, hey, you're gonna hear more about this. So here's where it gets insane. So Roy Bryant and his half-brother, J.W. William, went ahead and broke into where Emmett was staying with his grandparents, because I believe they said it was like at 2:30 in the morning. And they essentially went into every bedroom knocking, going, is this Emmett, where's Emmett Till? Where is he? Where's the boy who whistled? And so they held the family at gunpoint, which I was like, that's cool. And they basically told everyone in the house that, oh yeah, we're just going to take Emmett up the road, whip him a little bit, and then he'll be on, we'll bring him back. So first off, I think people have to understand, as little rights as black people had back then, there was nothing they could have done. And I think that's the part that's going to get lost on some people, because some people will just go, oh, well, why didn't they just fight back? I mean, they had a gun, too. They could have shot everyone in that fucking house, or most of the people in that fucking house, at the very least. So the whole concept of them being able to do something, they were really powerless in their own home. And and that's why I always, when people want to be really ignorant, go, well, if you're not breaking the law, you won't get in trouble. I mean, fuck, ask Breonna Taylor about that. She was in her home. She didn't do shit. And she's no longer with us. And I really think people need to take that step back and, again, realize Emmett Till was not that long ago. Emmett Till was like 60 years ago. They talked about how Emmett Till's mom only died within like the last decade, I want to say. I mean, a lot of the people who were involved were still around. So I kind of need people to understand that. Continuing here. So Emmett was taken, and 3 days later he was discovered. He discovered in Tallahatchie River. So he was hung with barbed wire that was wrapped around his neck to a 70-pound cotton gin fan, which you want to talk about how they could have used, rocks or, anything else to weigh him down. They use a cotton gin fan. Like, you want to talk about it not being, like, not being racially motivated, really. I think the Cotton Gin fan kind of goes ahead and fucking cements that. The other things I didn't know is that his tongue was cut and pushed to the back of his throat, and his privates have been cut off. And they also said that his mother said that there was a imprint or the indent of an axe. Like they used the axe to cut into his head, which I was like, oh my god. And I don't know if it's because I hadn't seen the picture in a while, or just my brain mentally went, okay, this is disturbing. We're gonna push this, to the back of your subconscious. Seeing the picture of Emmett Till, because of course, that's what sparked, in many ways, the like really helped drive the civil rights movement forward. I mean, the fact that his mother was like, they need to see what they did to my child, and you see how bloated Emmett looks and how he really just looks, it doesn't even look close to what he looked like when he's alive, and you just realize the level of violence that these men perpetrated against him. And I appreciate the fact that the film did talk about the fact that they didn't come right out and say it was just Roy Bryant and J.W. Millam, who's his half-brother. But it talks about the fact that it could have been 3-4 people, maybe even. So in doing research while watching this documentary, some stuff I didn't realize. So Carolyn Bryant, she was moved for days after Emmett was killed. She was moved from house to house between, I guess, Roy Bryant's mother and some siblings, and then J.W. Williams, like some people he knew, because they were trying to go ahead and keep Carolyn from having to go and speak to the police, which I think is just goddamn ridiculous when you think about that. That they were so worried about her, they're like, oh, you can't even talk to the police. So getting into the actual case, and this is where I'm going to try to keep this short because I only have a couple other things to say about this. I found this documentary very dense, and I will be honest, I watched this on Juneteenth. I was very emotional, to put it mildly. It's a very hard documentary to watch because you really do feel like things were just, you think about this being a kid, and you think about the fact that you would think kids would be sacred. The only kid I could ever think about who deserved to get killed was the if you're a fan of the show, you'll know exactly the episode I'm talking about. That episode of Law and Order where that kid was like, "I'm sorry," because he killed his classmate and acted like he didn't do it on purpose. It's like that Macaulay Culkin movie, The Good Son, and the dad snapped and shot him. I remember that. I was like, "Oh, I understand." Like, I'm not saying you should have killed them, but to quote Chris Rock, I understand. Emmett Till being so young, and you just think about the level of violence that went against him. And that, for me, is where I just go, wow, these men, not only did they get off, that's the thing, this went to trial and everything, and I'd like to point out there was not one juror of color on that jury, because, shocking. But the other thing that they did bring up, which I'm happy they did as well, they bring up the fact that 4 months after the trial and they were acquitted, they admitted their guilt in a Look magazine article and made $4,000 for their confession, in which they graphically went ahead and detailed how they abducted him, how they killed him. They talked about how they pistol whipped him, forced him to disrobe, tied the cotton gin fan around his neck, shot him, and then dumped his body in the river. Carolyn Bryant, before she died, said nothing that boy could ever justify what happened to him. And she had said during the trial, or when this all initially was happening, she said that he grabbed her and in a sexual manner, and then she admitted that, oh yeah, that didn't happen. And it takes me back to that one of the latest Chappelle specials where you just go, you fucking bitch, you fucking lied. But I love what Chappelle said about how, his casket was almost the fuel that drove civil rights forward. And so, yes, I know things aren't great now, but you think about where we would be without Emmett Till. I mean, it's a really interesting and kind of a scary question to think about. I mean, where would we be without Emmett Till? I have to give him this person a lot of credit. I am not a fan normally of Al Sharpton. I think sometimes he comes across uh, more like a cartoon character than a politician. But some of the stuff he said in this documentary was so profound. It really actually caught me off guard. If I'm being completely honest, I was like, "Wow, okay." Uh, this film is worth watching alone just for the um, I think some of the quotes and the leadership that Al Sharpton shows, and God, if we could get God, if we could get more of that Al Sharpton, that would actually be better for everybody. Um, what is so? The last thing I'll bring up here is this was a 3-day trial, right? And they talked about how the all white, all male jury deliberated. He was Roy Bryant and his brother, pardon me, or his half brother. They were found not guilty on September 23rd, 1955. They talked about how they had already determined not guilty like 10 minutes in, but they were told to make it look good, so they went ahead and deliberated for, I believe it said, just around 90 minutes. And they went ahead and were basically just drinking beer and soda, hanging out, waiting for the hour, or the 90 minutes, pardon me. And that is fucking disgusting when you think about it. It really hurts your head when you start to think about it. One thing I will say as I wrap up here, it was great to see to hear about Mammy Elizabeth Till Mobley after losing her son. She talked about how God came to her. She says that she saw God in a vision, how he's my child, and you still have work to do. And I thought that was very powerful. We talk about the connection that people of color do have to the church, and how Black Jesus, or just Jesus, he's not white. Jesus damn sure isn't white. All right, let's just say that. But this connection that people of color do have to religion, I did find that inspiring as a fellow person of faith. I really did love the way she went ahead and threw that in there, because she really didn't have to put that in there for the interview, but she went out of her way to talk about how this is he's God's baby, and I know that he's up there in heaven, and how she used this terrible fucking tragic thing that happened to her, and she turned it into as much of a positive as humanly possible. She earned her master's degree in administration and supervision from Loyola University, with an additional 45 credits towards a doctorate. She began speaking nationally about her son in 1985. She unfortunately was widowed in 2000 and then died in the 6th of January in 2003 of a heart attack. But she was 81 years old. That's a hell of a run. I mean, considering the trauma, like, I mean, and this is going to sound terrible, but, I mean, you think about people, they talk about, in the scientific community, how people can die sometimes with a broken heart. And the fact that this woman was so strong, and she was able to take this terrible fucking thing and go ahead and really be the voice for so many people in the African American community. I personally can't thank her enough, because my mom talks to me about the fact that, look, I'm a black man in this country, and she's scared. My sister Beth and Cammie, she's always worried about us just because of us being minorities. And it's a shitty fucking realization to have, but it's also something you need to be aware of. And I really believe that this documentary, like I said, it's 70 minutes, but it's a dense 70 minutes. It's almost 2 hours of material packed in 70 minutes. And to be honest, that's really my only big complaint about it, is that I wish they'd given this maybe 90 minutes. I think if you stretch this out to 90 minutes, because I'll say, like, I'm getting more and more into documentaries, but this really just hit heavy, not just because of the subject matter, because of how dense it is. There's a lot of stuff in here, but there's a lot of stuff in here to discuss, and I'm just kind of cherry picking what I found most interesting. But there's a lot you could take away from this. But at the end of the day, I think the thing to take away from this is that Emmett Till, as shitty and terrible and fucking tragic as it is what happened to him, he did not die in vain. And that, I mean, this is something that I learned about in school, like freshman year. This is something I've had to try to educate people on, something I definitely bring up to people, and I truly believe George Floyd will end up in that same sort of arena, that same conversation. I think that these marches and how people are raising their voices and educating themselves and how we're educating each other, I really think that this is going to end up doing so much good in the long run. And I pray that we continue to just listen and educate and love on each other. But I was in tears for most of this. Again, it is a hard watch, but it is well worth your time. It's on Amazon Prime Video. It's on Prime, so you don't even have to pay to watch this. If you didn't do anything for Juneteenth, or didn't watch anything, as far as black cinema or anything this weekend, I think this is a hell of a watch. You should watch something like this and educate yourself a little bit. Just because of because of how it is laid out, and I mean as far as the length of the documentary, that I think how it's presented at times, it's a little confusing. And I was dead dog sober watching this, just for the record. But I'm going to still give this a solid A. This is something that's well worth your time. You do need to watch it if you haven't watched it. If you don't know about Emmett Till, this is a great way for you to learn. Don't be afraid to learn, everyone. Go ahead and reach out to people. I've had people reach out to me about, black artists to listen to, black films to watch, and hell, you can always tweet me, ask me. I talk about movies a little bit, but I thought this was incredibly well done. It is a hard watch, so I wouldn't watch this after, you got like engaged or something, like something great happened for you. But this is well worth your time, and it deserves your attention. But check this out on Amazon. Thank you, guys and girls. Thank you so much for your help and for your support. We love you. Please stay safe out there. And I believe, as I mentioned at the top of the podcast, we'll have some happier stuff this upcoming weekend. Reviews for Training Day and the original Avengers. But stay safe out there. Happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there. And we will talk to you guys soon. You guys take care. Bye-bye.